All right, and it is, wait, 20 seconds. And we are live.
We're live. All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to the March 16th meeting of the Environment Subcommittee. This is the order in which we're going to discuss the bills that went out on the agenda. First, get an update on House Bill 869 and talk about House Bill 649, then House Bill 1200 and House Bill 1201. And we have until, Doug and Gilchrist, what time is your subcommittee meeting?
5:30.
5:30. Okay, so we've got till 5:29. So Doug Gilchrist, you want to give us an update on as to where things stand on House Bill 869?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes. We discussed this in subcommittee yesterday, and a lot has happened in 22 hours. Including a Senate hearing on the cross file, in which, and with the work that, and I see CBF is here and Rory Murray is here and Tyler Abbott is here, with the work they've put in to come to a consensus, switch it to a study, identify some environmental issues that need to be looked at to properly permit these projects. In the Senate, like the five groups came together and all agreed on the same study. The Sierra Club, which had been at the hearing, unfavorable, now with the study and all the work that's being done, they put in a letter of information. So I think we're very close, and we're not ready to vote it right now, but we're there. And if we could just give Rory Murray 35 seconds, he's put a lot of effort into trying to get a good environmental outcome.
Sure.
Thank you, Delegate Gilchrist and committee. As the delegate just said, between Chesapeake Bay Foundation, industry representatives, MDE, Severn River Keeper, Maryland Coastal Bays, we spent 3 weeks after the hearing working almost on a daily basis to get the language to where we wanted it. And Sierra Club was invited to all of those, but the timing just didn't work out well for them. So they initially opposed. They had some submitted amendments. We responded saying, we appreciate all of your suggestions. We think the way that the study is currently drafted, it's already poised to answer all of these questions. This is going to be part of the study, and we would appreciate it if you would remove your opposition. You don't have to necessarily support the bill, but at least remove your opposition. They did send a letter of interest instead of a letter of opposition, and sent an email follow-up saying, in the spirit of cooperation, they do think that this type of study is the best route forward and are happy to work together going forward. So
thank you.
Have everybody where they need to be.
Well, it seems like that the spirit of cooperation that Delegate Stewart and Ennerton are showing is like, it's just breaking out all over.
It's contagious. It's contagious, Mr. Chairman. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's impressive. So, okay. All right. So that's the update. So no action at this subcommittee meeting, maybe one to come soon, but thank you for the update and thanks for all the work on that bill. Okay. House Bill. I'm sorry. Delegate Ruth, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I had a good conversation with Rory this afternoon as well. And I did just want to hear if Robin had anything additional to add to that.
Oh, thank you, Delegate. No, CBF has been working closely with the advocates, and we're comfortable and actually think this study could move things forward.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Next, let's move on to House Bill 649. Kristen, could you update us on any amendments to the bill?
Sure. The Senate has adopted amendments, and the bill sponsor has indicated that she would like to conform her bill to the Senate bill. And I'm going to bring up a reprint copy of that.
So again, this is the discharge permits, inspections, administrative continuations, also known as the zombie permit bill. So.
Okay. All right, is it up on your screen?
Yes.
All right. So the bill initially would have restricted the length of time that the department could administratively continue a discharge permit. So the First Amendment removes that language from the bill.
So Chris, I'm sorry. What is the implication of that then? There can't be any administrative continuation of a permit for more than the period that the permit's in place?
So the proposal was to restrict the length of time that the department could administratively continue a permit. So this actually would no longer do that. So there's not going to be an express restriction,
Okay.
a law on administrative continuations.
Okay. Got it.
A definition is added for administratively continued permit. It would not include a discharge permit that has been continued beyond its original expiration date due to an enforcement action taken during the permit term. So this bill is not going to apply to those types of situations. The next page relates to inspections, and there's two types of inspections being required under the amended language. The first, under, I guess this is subsection B2, would require monthly inspections for MDE to inspect at least once a month each facility or site that the department or EPA has determined to be in significant non-compliance with an applicable state or federal water quality standard, effluent limitation, or other applicable requirement of the department or EPA. There's language added if the site is determined to be in significant non-compliance solely due to the failure to report required information. The department or the failure to report any required information to the department or EPA, the department may delay these inspections. Under paragraph 3, that's relating to inspections for facilities or sites that have been operating under an administratively continued permit for longer than a year. That would require the department to inspect those facilities or sites at least once every 90 days. Okay. So let's see. So under the bill as introduced, the department must require a permit holder to submit a written report to the department detailing how violations reported by the permit holder or noted by the department will be addressed and the timeline for addressing these violations. And this applies to sorry. I'm kind of processing this anew myself. Paragraph 1 of this. I'll have to look back and see. I'm assuming that's just applying to the folks that are in violation. So language is added. So there are penalty provisions in this bill, and it's going to go on to the next page. Originally, as introduced, it set up penalty provisions for minor facilities and major facilities, but that's now being changed to apply to minor discharger. And here's the the list of penalties that apply to a minor discharger. And then in beginning in line 8, these are the penalties that apply to a major discharger. And there's a provision that indicates that those penalties provided are in addition to any other civil or criminal penalty provided under the subtitle. There's a language in the bill that requires the department to clear the backlog of administratively continued discharge permits. On line 26, we're pushing back the date for the department to report on the number of additional employees necessary to clear the backlog of administratively continued discharge permits. And then process discharge permit renewals in a timely manner. So,
Kristen, I'm sorry, could you go back to the bottom of page 4? So you're saying the date, I'm sorry, yeah, right there.
so the date, so the report initially was due December 31st, 2020, I think 2023. And so the date as amended, this report on the number of additional employees necessary to complete the items listed would be by October 1st, 2022.
Okay.
And then the department must, so this also makes an earlier date by which the department must request PINs for at least half of the additional employees identified in the report that was described previously. And then by December 31st, 2023, PINs for the full number of additional employees that were identified as being necessary to implement the bill. Then there's an ongoing reporting requirement. Actually, that's not true. It's not it's a one-time reporting requirement. On or before December 31st, 2025, the department must report on the number of facilities or sites subject to discharge permits that were administratively continued or expired at the end of the prior fiscal year by census tract, and the number of additional positions for the subsequent fiscal year that the department needs to ensure that any discharge permit that have been continued or expired for more than 365 days are renewed in a timely manner.
Okay. And I know that with these changes, I guess the fiscal cost comes down at least somewhat. Tyler, remind me, do you have an estimate as to what the revised fiscal cost would be with these changes?
So with these changes, our fiscal estimate comes down to 91 employees plus vehicles for those employees who are doing the inspections, which brings us to about $9 million.
And that's on a recurring basis, $9 million per year.
It goes down in the second year, and then we're looking closer to 7, I believe. Let me pull it up, sorry. You're looking at 9.2 in the first year and then 6.5 in the second year.
Okay. All right, Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple questions. First of all, about that December 31st, 2022 date for requesting half the PINs. When is the new governor sworn in, and does that fall into like a gray area where it's going to be problematic?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know exact date, but it's after December. It'd be January of next year.
Okay, I feel like that's a stupid question. I'm sorry.
No, not at all.
Just wondered. And then what's the definition of major discharger and minor discharger?
They're not defined in the bill, so I actually don't have that before me. I'm not sure if they are defined or not, but not in the bill, I don't think.
Okay.
So we have major and minor wastewater facilities, but we don't have a major or a minor discharger defined.
Is that a problem that we're now having different penalties for major and minor dischargers and we're not defining that?
I think, it could lead to issues. It's also going to be a hard thing to define because this bill spans across many different permits. And so we would have to define those parameters per permit that is covered.
But that would be something that MDE would do if this bill passes. You would define in regulation or something.
I think that we would have to.
Thank you.
Okay, Delegate Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering about the 91 employee PINs. Are these 99 employees a part of the employee, I guess, fleet that MDE needs anyway? Or is this in addition to what they would need to manage work per this bill?
So this bill would require us to do an additional 10,500 about inspections. And so that is additional work. EPA doesn't require these, inspection frequencies as well as our current statute does not. And so this elevated frequency will require significant staff.
So again, this is 91 employees above the employees that you are understaffed. So this is an additional 91 above what you already need.
This is an additional 91 to what we need to carry out our current work.
And respectfully, if not this bill to require these additional bodies, if you had the staff, would you be doing these inspections as you should?
We would not be doing it at this frequency, no.
And that's only because the EPA doesn't require it and not because you don't think these facilities should be, these permits should be inspected?
I don't think that the frequency is needed.
Even though some of the ones in question tend to be large polluters and violators.
I think that it depends on what permit you are looking at.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And just for everyone's information, we're not going to, move on the bill one way or the other tonight, but certainly happy to keep the conversation going at least for a few minutes. So Betsy, I saw you had your hand up.
Thank you, Vice Chair Stein. I just wanted to quickly address a couple of the questions that came up to Delegate Boyce's question. MDE doesn't actually have an estimate of how many additional staff they need. So this is in addition to their current staff. But that gap that we talked about at that hearing, that was actually identified in a report about the drinking water program. So this
is a different program.
Yeah, so this one, the water supply program, has not had that kind of study. So I agree with what Tyler said. I just wanted to clarify it for the group that since there isn't an assessment of that, where we are staff-wise right now and where we need to be for MDE to keep up with all of the inspections and permits, it just changes the calculus a little bit. So it's not like they're going to add 70 based on that report and then an additional 90. It would just be from where they are right now to 90 additional. If that, hopefully that
I could
helpful.
clarify, the water supply program did have the study. Our compliance program did not have a study.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Other questions or comments? And Kristen, you may mention this already, but what's the status of the Crossbow in the Senate?
Is that a question for me? I had a hard time hearing. Did you have
I was just,
technical status in the cross file?
yes.
Okay, so yeah, as far as I know, I think that is it passed or the second reading has passed with amendments.
And with these amendments that we have. Okay. Okay. Robin, did you want to add something?
Yeah, if I could, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to point out that the amendments, as Kristen described, greatly scale back the number of inspections that the department would need to undertake. They reduce, for example, the inspections of any facility in significant non-compliance just because of a failure to report. They say they would give a month's grace period in which time an inspection would not occur. And they also say that any facility permitted under a general permit, which is thousands of facilities that are in administratively continued status, would not need to be inspected unless they were also in significant non-compliance. And I would love to hear from Tyler more about that 10,000 figure, given those dramatic changes, because it's not meshing with the data that I have available on the number of zombies or SNCs or the number of inspections that would be required in the amended version of the bill.
Sure. In the amended version of the bill, you would have around 150 individual permits with significant non-compliance and about 700 additional in SNC from the generals. And so then that's 850 inspections a month at least. Some of those could be overlaps. I mean, there could be more or less in any given month. We do want to get, in addition, we also have the administratively extended provisions for the individual permits, although we are working to get that number down to 10% of the individual permits. We're looking at quite a few inspections.
So Tyler, I guess you're saying 850, there might be some overlap, but let's just say roughly 850 per month and times 12 is where you come up with the 10,000 plus. Is that right?
Yes, let me. Yeah, about that. I mean, slightly less.
Okay.
But then we also will have, and I took a lot of these based off our numbers in water and LMA, minorly more than that as well. But I think that's a safe estimate.
Okay. Betsy, do you have a new comment you wanted to toss in?
Yes, I just think that there might be some flawed assumptions that if you're going to have an inspection of a facility in significant non-compliance, hopefully that fixes it. If not, on the second inspection, they must assess penalties. So I don't think we're going to have, there's something gone really wrong if you're going out every month for an entire year and the situation isn't fixed. So I think it's much more likely that a facility would be inspected once or twice rather than every 12 months, because that would say they were remaining in significant non-compliance for that entire year.
Robin, did you still have your hand up, or was that from before?
Yeah, if I could. I guess I'd just say, we've had multiple conversations with the department, and Tyler's been very forthcoming about scheduling calls with his chief of inspections, the Water Sciences Administration, et cetera. And I hope to continue that conversation because it's not jiving right now with what we would expect with the dramatic changes we've made to the bill. And I'm hoping there might be something hidden in there, such as the vast number that we're looking at reported by the department in significant non-compliance under general permits. What portion of that is failure to report, or what portion of that, as my colleague said, might be cleared out in a relatively timely manner. So would look forward to continuing those conversations and hope that the subcommittee would oblige.
Sure. And I would just include also that, in our earlier, overview of the bill, we didn't even include what the scope was because we misunderstood the scope as was then clarified by the
So,
advocates.
okay,
And
I
so-
think it's important when you start off being like, we're totally fine. That's all.
Hey, Kristen, I think you need to
Oh,
mute.
I'm sorry.
That's right.
Whoops, I thought I was doing something wrong. Our original fiscal note would have been much larger if we would have had the intent of what the advocacy groups had for the original intent. I just want to make that clear. So we did bring it down quite a bit from what the original intent was. It is significantly less than what our workload would have been with the bill as intended. And so I do look forward to having more conversations.
Okay, great. Any last questions or comments before we move on to House Bill 1200?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to know what the carbon footprint would be for these inspections. It sounds like a lot of traveling, and if this electric car, they're still burning rubber on the highway. So that sounds like a cost to the Highway Trust Fund as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Boyce, did you have a?
I did, and I to Tyler's point earlier, which respectfully, I want to say, just because the EPA doesn't demand it or require it, doesn't mean that we shouldn't meet a higher expectation. So that's, or higher standards. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Sure. Yeah, we do more frequent inspections than EPA. It was more of a statement. So my apologies.
Okay, all right, very good. All right, let's move on to House Bill 1200. So Kristen, could you tell us about updates we have about, and Power as well, about fiscal costs, and I guess also remind us, we did go over the proposed amendments at our last meeting, is that right?
We did. They've been cleaned up a little bit, so I will share that just so that just to make sure that there wasn't any inadvertent change. But we did mostly go over these concepts, and I'll let Tyler expand more. But these amendments are anticipated to reduce the fiscal note quite a bit to about 3 pins, which would be around $150,000.
Would you like me to talk about the changes, or?
I'm looking for to bring it up, Tyler.
Okay, just want to make sure.
I had all this stuff up and now I'm not sure. All right. Okay. So this should look very familiar to what we discussed a couple days ago. They're updating, instead of referring to the EJ screen, it's going to just be more to the EJ tool, which would be a publicly available state mapping tool. Do you want me to just go over everything we said just real quick?
Sure, why don't you?
Yeah, a tool that explores layers of environmental justice concern and determine an overall EJ score for census tracts in the state. And because we're talking about census tract, we have, so the bill as amended is requiring a person applying for a permit that's specifically listed in the public participation part of the code to include in the permit application the EJ score, which would be from the Maryland EJ tool for the census tract where the applicant is seeking a permit, unless the permit requires the applicant to use a tool that's developed under by EPA. And we had changed references to address the bill to census tract. Similar changes are being made below, and it would require MDE to review the EJ score for the census tract to verify the applicant's information. There was language, I think we talked about last meeting, where it was going to change the shall to a may, and this one is not updated. But in speaking with the department, there are a couple provisions in the bill that rely on the department adopting regulations. Like one was under a definition, and the other, I can't remember, but we'll get to it. So I'm actually thinking that this amendment should still require the department to adopt regulations to implement the bill, since portions of the bill rely on the department defining certain terms, but the department would like that date to be taken out.
So line 30 there on page 3, the may would go back to shall?
It's going to go back to shall. I did not catch that on this reprint, sorry.
Okay.
And then when there's instances where you, the department must publish public notice, this notice would include the EJ score for the census tract where the applicant is seeking a permit. And then it would update language to say that it would also include the address of the department's website for accessing the EJ score review. And then it would include a description that wouldn't be, it would include a description of the environmental justice indicators contributing to the EJ score. And then similar language is added to another notice provision below.
Kristen, could you go back to the description of the indicator? I think there.
Of the.
No, I'm sorry, it's below.
Oh.
But the department shall provide a description. I think it was after that.
Oh, sure. This is in the notice.
Yeah, of the EJ indicators contributing to the EJ score. So that
which initially was in the earlier part of the bill, but it didn't really say who they were providing it to. So I thought the intent might be to be in this notice provision.
Right, and those indicators would be provided by the tool that's being used, right? Am I correct in that?
So that's I'm sorry, that's why I was scrolling back. I was going to look at the definition.
Okay.
Because the EJ score would be an overall evaluation of an area's environment and existing environmental justice indicators. And then that would be defined in regulation by the department and could include those items 1 through 4.
Okay. Got it. And if anyone else has questions while we're going through this, just jump on in. Okay, do you want to continue?
I think that was all, right? Yeah, I think we went over everything.
Oh, we went over all the changes. Okay.
Yeah, the only difference from what you're seeing is that I need to update where it would say the department shall adopt regulations to implement the section. For example, when we were just talking about the environmental justice indicators, there was language added to say as defined in regulations. So the department would need regulations they're going to have to adopt regulations to further define that. So it just thought it made sense to keep a requirement in the bill to adopt regulations.
Sure. Delegate Boyce.
I'm sorry, I had to step away real quick. My aide was leaving for the day. Does this still post the score on the permit, or I'm trying to look for the
so this would put it it would publish it in the notice provisions.
Okay.
The department would have a review, an EJ score review on that application.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other, any subcommittee member have any other questions? And Betsy, I'll get to you in 1 second, but Kristen, you were saying that in Tower, I saw you say this in an email as well. So the way this has been revised is this would require just 3 pins for a cost of approximately $150,000. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So that's, type of fiscal cost, which doesn't require us to get, sign up from appropriations. And Tower, you were good with this language as well, right? I guess you helped craft it.
Yes. Yeah, I think we're fine with it. I think some of the clarifications are very helpful for us.
Okay. Delgado Boyce, do you have a follow-up question? No, okay. Okay, Betsy, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to add to Delegate Boyce's question that the applicant will submit the materials with a score on it, and then MDE publishes that score and the indicators of it when they're putting it out for public notice. So that, and the rest of this stuff in here is really just cleaning up and clarifying. I don't think the intent of the bill has changed at all. We have just made it more clear of what it's supposed to apply to. Like we were accidentally getting a whole bunch of permits in there that we don't need. Like what did you tell me it was, Tyler, like x-ray machines and stuff?
Yeah, we would have had every permit at the department, and now it's public notice permits.
Yeah, so these are just really kind of tidying up, and thank you to Tyler and the other folks at MDE for helping to clean this up.
Thanks.
And Tyler, the public notice permits, is it fair to say that those are the ones that have the biggest potential environmental impact in terms of emissions or discharge or whatever?
Exactly. And if there are, as we were talking about general permits, if there are contentious NOIs under a general permit, those can also be required to get an individual within triggers this. And so those ones that people are interested in will be covered.
Okay. Okay, any other questions? So I guess the amendments are good to go with the exception of, that line 30, which is up there before us, would become, instead of department may adopt regulations, shall adopt regulations. The fiscal note is good to go. So does anyone want to make a motion?
Move the amendments.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the bill as amended.
Move the bill, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Okay, any final discussion of the bill? All right, all those in favor of the bill as amended say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, bill passes as amended. Thank you. Yeah, and thanks for everyone's work on this. Okay, 1201, let's just discuss where it stands, and happy to take any comments or questions that folks have. So Kristen, I know the Senate passed it out with, I guess, with amendments, is that right?
Right. Did we describe that? Sorry.
Sure.
Didn't mean to interrupt you. So the
Yeah.
bill, as introduced, is requiring a surcharge to be collected on existing civil penalties for water pollution violations. And then those surcharge revenues are deposited into an oyster repletion fund. The amendment is also adding administrative penalties. So the surcharge would be collected on civil and administrative penalties.
And so again, so the surcharge, which is what, 25%, is that right?
So the surcharge would be 25% on that civil penalty or administrative penalty.
Right, and all goes into the oyster repletion fund. Okay.
25%, yeah.
First, questions or comments from subcommittee members?
I'll move the amendments.
Okay, all right, hold on, let's,
All right.
all right, let's, if you don't mind, Delgado, hold that for one, maybe a couple of minutes. Let's hear if anyone else has any comments or questions. Tyler, is there anything that you wanted to contribute from MDE?
If you don't mind, if the subcommittee wants to move this bill, we do have quite a few legal concerns about how to implement the bill. And so there will be work that needs to be done in order to alleviate some of those. I think it's a little bit ambiguous about how the surcharge is going to work for us. And I think that the lawyers here and everybody could appreciate that. We're not totally sure that if, when we go to court for one of these incidents, we we'll, have our suggested penalty, our penalty that we have figured out, and then that will be, I guess, arbitrated by the court system. And so then is it 25% on top of what we propose, or 25% on top of what the courts impose? And then do we need to require that the courts provide us a itemized breakdown of the decision so that we can provide a 25% surcharge on the specific discharge violation penalty? Because our penalties are not just one item, and there's probably like 6 or 7 items that could be included in that. So we just have a lot of concerns we'd have to work out on, the, I guess, mechanics of how that's going to work.
Okay. Delegate Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Tyler, can you be a little more direct about what you think you need? For instance, is it that you want to put 25% on top of all of the fees? I hear.
I would need to work out with our legal team on what would be best for us, because I think that, if we get a decision back from the courts and it's $100,000, the way that this bill is written, we wouldn't be able to impose 25% on top of that because it's $100,000 max. And so
wouldn't we just insert language that would say in the exception of the max,
we could, but then that would directly just mean that our penalties that are discharge related, 25% of what we receive would go right into this fund, and that, other environmental, it would just divert, 25% is not creating 25% new money in these settlements. Does that make sense? I know that was kind of roundabout.
It was.
Not a lawyer.
I don't know. It sounds like you just want or need some clarification about how much more you can collect. And it feels like it can be easily determined. I don't know. Let me think a little.
Yeah, I'm happy to, work through it if folks would like to. Yeah. Offline. Please.
Yeah, I know, Allison, you have your hand on it, and let me just say, before we get to 529, Delegate Ido's made a motion, so if anyone, I won't ask for a second right now, but before we end, I'll ask if anyone wants to second it. If we adopt the amendments, great, we'll hold the bill. But anyway, so just wanted to circle back with you, Delegate Ido, and before that, Delegate Boyce, did you have another question?
Yeah, can I hear what Allison has to say quickly before
Sure.
I kind of move forward? Because this does feel a little confusing to me, and I just want to.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Delegate Boyce. What I just wanted to mention is that with respect to the amendments that were added on the Senate side, they do significantly, in our viewpoint, broaden the scope of the bill, which makes it a little bit concerning with respect to the implementation. So I think maybe Tyler and I are kind of on a similar vein here. Adding the administrative penalties significantly broadens the scope and complicates the implementation, I believe. And so we just wanted to bring that up to you all for your consideration as you deliberate. So thank you for the opportunity to weigh in.
Okay.
Second.
All right, so there's a second on the amendments. Any further
I do have a discussion, because if we're not sure how to implement this, then nobody's going to get 25%. So I'm just trying.
Yeah, well, Delegate, let me just say, procedurally, we could adopt the amendments.
Sure.
And then we could conceivably, if we want, after further discussion, go back and fine tune those
I mean,
amendments.
I don't
Or we
want to
could
hold
not
up
adopt the
the,
amendments and
Jake.
just leave the bill as it is right now. So, okay. So by show of hands, who is in favor of adopting the amendments? I guess just raise your hand. Delgado, Ampry, Delegate Anderson, Delegate Prettyman. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, opposed. By show of hands. Oh, with respect to adopting the amendments.
Mr. Chairman, I'm for it.
You're for adopting the amendments? Okay, so that's 5. So that's
I
a
have my
majority.
hand up as well.
Okay, great.
We good. Let's roll. Let's roll.
Well, I'm going to hold the bill. We've adopted the amendments, and we
Can't never get that done.
So I know everyone's eager to move to
I understand.
progress with our agenda.
You know
and,
what? If we're gonna do it,
no,
let's do
but
it
I'm going to
right.
hold the bill. What's that?
If we're gonna do it, let's do it right. You're
This is
absolutely
Delegate
correct.
Jacob's bill. If it ain't done right, I'm not gonna get to go fishing. So
I don't want to vote for the bill anyway, so.
That's right. We'll be disinvited from future. Yes. So, okay. All right. So we've adopted the amendments, held the bill, further conversations with MDE and Allison. And why don't you loop in Delegate Boyce as well? Okay. So we are actually done early. How about that? But having said that, we'll need to meet on Friday sometime. So we'll figure out a time.
Yes, sir.
So won't be too early. I'll say that. I'm not a morning person, so it won't be like an
Me
8
neither.
a.m. meeting. So,
But I mean, this is very, very tedious work, and I think, you're doing a good job holding everything together.
thank you.
Right.
Thank you. All right. So with that, we are adjourned, and see Natural Resources folks in 5 minutes, and everyone else tomorrow. All right.
Thank
See
you,
ya.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.